Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for attending. This is Carla Sutter, and I'm really pleased to be able to have our second in a new monthly series of webinars that Synergy HomeCare will be providing to the community and professionals. As I will share at the end of the webinar, if you would like to have a certificate of attendance after the completion of this webinar, please feel free to use the email address that you'll see on the screen and just send me a message, and we will get that out to you in your email. Additionally, by Friday, a recorded version of this will be up on the Synergy HomeCare YouTube channel. So if you have others in your network, family members that you think would benefit from this, please have them go to the Synergy HomeCare YouTube channel, and they will see not only this webinar, but several others that we have recorded in the past. Again, thank you all for attending, and you feel free at any point to type in questions. I will look at those at the end of our time versus doing those in between. So thank you so much. Again, my name is Carla Sutter. I am a social worker, but I am a director of operations for the Synergy HomeCare system. I have worked in healthcare for the past 30 years, which is where much of the stories and the examples and the experience with working with families and having these tough conversations comes from. So I'm really looking forward to being able to share this information with all of you. I think that this, for any of you who have seen previous presentations that I've done, many of you will have seen this particular slide. And I use this in so many of the sessions that I provide because I think it is such a clarifying visual and really speaks to so many different topics, but particularly for the one we're going to be talking about today, which is having the talk with family members about care needs. And what's important about this slide is that, again, there are things in our lives we can control, things we can influence, and things we cannot control. And what happens for many of us in a variety of situations is that we put our energy, our resources, our finances, our time into the wrong bucket. And we try to control something that we really have no control over. And often, as just human nature, what happens is when we lose control, when we don't feel that we have that sense of control, we often can become controlling. And that's often not a normal part of our personality, but it's just something that happens just in our human nature. As we go through this conversation today, I think it's really important to recognize that there are going to be many times when you are having a talk on whatever conversation, whatever topic with other people who you can't control their feelings, their reactions, their emotions, that when you can't change somebody, even when you believe that what you're trying to do is only with the best intent and that you feel that you have the right answer, you're often going to come to a kind of a bypass with them because you're trying to control something that they feel they have the control over, and vice versa. So kind of think about this slide as we have this conversation, and certainly if you then move forward with having any kind of conversation and talk with a family member. I think that the reality is it is not that we don't plan. We just often don't plan for getting older, which is interesting because it is one of the inevitabilities. You know, we talk about taxes and we talk about death as an inevitable, but really the process of aging is an inevitable. It's happening every day. It's happening every moment in our bodies, in our minds. But we don't plan for what can happen during the aging process. We plan for having a child. We plan for how we're going to raise that child once they're here. We plan for college savings. We even plan and spend a lot of time investing and talking about retirement planning, which is certainly part of the aging process and something that we need as we move forward. But it's not the conversation we're having today, which is what happens when care needs arise. We plan for moving. We plan for job shifts. And so, again, I think that for all of you who are on this call today, I applaud you because, again, we often don't want to think about this until there is nothing else that we can do, until it is so clear in our mind that we have to do something different. But what happens is when we wait, we lose options. And again, we lose control. Having these conversations early on is the best way for everybody to have a say, to have control of what happens next. And I think if you use that language during the conversation and talk about it, particularly if you're starting early, I think that is going to be a real positive and will really help all of you. Today's talk is really going to be about getting from point A to plan. And really there's 5 steps to this. And again, this is true no matter what the conversation is going to be about. It's true whether we're talking about care needs. It's true if we're talking about finances. It's true when we're talking to our, teenagers about drinking and peer pressure. So all of the things you're going to learn today, many of them are going to be able to help you in a variety of situations. So the things that are important to get from point A to plan is we need to prepare to have the talk. And as we go through some of the steps, you'll recognize that there's a lot probably more to that than you even anticipated. And it's doing the work up front and thinking about some of these things up front is really going to help in the end. We're going to talk about how you organize your team and who is part of your team. We're going to talk about how to assess the needs, both the short and the long term. And while we're not going to go deep into this, it's important that everybody knows what are the things that we should be looking at, or what are the things that we may need to have a conversation about with our family members around care needs, around the aging process. We're going to look at how you develop the plan, and then most importantly, what is the next step to action? Because a plan is only as good as what we're going to do to put it into play, to put it into that action. So when is the best time to have this conversation? The best time to have the conversation is really when everyone is doing well. Because the longer you wait, the greater chance that cognitive decline or health concerns will have already started, and which will hinder both the conversation and the options available. But as we're doing that, we want to ensure that we are being a partner with them and not a parent to them. There's kind of a line that says, as our parents age, we begin to parent our parents. And I think that if we use that, and while I understand what's behind it, but if we really kind of allow ourselves to think that we are parenting them, then we really miss opportunities that they still are our parents, that they still have something to teach and to share with us. But more importantly, I think we take away some of their control over the situation. And so we really become a partner with them. And our partnership may not be equal. We may have a larger role, but it doesn't mean that we are in a parenting role with them.
You want to click on the program and then click again.
So one of the things that's important is to really think about and ask yourself some questions. And these are questions for you to ask yourself. These are questions for anybody that's going to be participating in the conversation to ask themselves. But what are you needing to get out of this conversation versus what are you hoping to get? You know, what we hope for may be that our parents decide to make a move to our town or city so that we're closer by, so that we don't have to be driving a half hour each way to assist them. But what we really need is that we know that our family member is safe, that they have the resources available to them. And it may in the end be that we're not the ones doing that every day, but we want to know what that goal is. So there's a difference between what we need to get out of the conversation and what we hope to get out of the conversation. What is your bottom line? And really think about if you no longer are able to manage the time drain that's happening because your parents are requiring you to do all of the tasks that they are unable to do anymore. If that is interrupting in a way that's damaging to your own family, maybe your children, your work, any of those pieces, then your bottom line is that something has to be different than it is today. The other piece is who is the best person to have this conversation. And this is a tough one because we all believe that it should be us. But the reality is, if we look at the legacy of how our families make decisions, who has the greatest opportunity for shifting thoughts, it may not be us. We may, as accomplished as we have become in our lives, we may no longer be able to move our role in our parents' eyes from youngest child to accomplished adult, even in a field that is healthcare related. So we may not be the best person to have the conversation. They may, when it comes to conversations about finances, always have gone to your older sister or your older brother, or another family member. Maybe they have a younger cousin or whoever it is that has the biggest impact. That's who should be having the conversation, or at least should be leading it. And again, this is not the time for egos to get tied up. Are you doing this with your family member or for your family member? And again, we have to think about the partnership. We can't, unless somebody is no longer to make decisions on their own and they have been deemed incompetent, we can't just come in and take over. We can't just come in and force decisions, as much as we would like to. But as a judge once said, just because people make foolish choices does not deem them incompetent. So again, unless they are at a risk to themselves or to someone else by their actions, we don't have the right to be able to just change everything for them. And again, it goes back to a partnership. We have to consider past emotional-laden conversations and either replicate or avoid that past process depending on how those turned out. So this is where it's really key to think about, again, how your family has made decisions in the past. How have conversations gone? Who has best directed them? What have been the red flags to know I have overstepped my kind of boundary with how far I can push this, and I need to bring in kind of others? What personal impact will their decision have on you? The greater the impact that their decision has on any one of the participants in this talk, the greater chance that people will become more defensive, that they will become more emotional, that they'll move away from being able to be a partner to being a final decision maker. So it's really important to assess that from the moment you are thinking about having the conversation. And the last thing to consider is location, location, location. It is not just for real estate when we think about that. Where is the best place to have the conversation? Are they most comfortable in their own home and setting? Is it best to have it in a neutral environment? Is it best to have it at the attorney's office because they have a strong relationship with that attorney, or the financial planner, or maybe a restaurant because it's best to be doing it more in a public place because everybody kind of keeps their voices down and is socially adept and socially aware of those conversations and not wanting to involve others. So really think about where is the best location. As we move to the actual communication do's, and of course there's going to be communication don'ts, some of these are very simplistic. Some of these are what any good conversation should have. Some of them may be unique for this particular one. Of course, we should always use I statements, as that leads to sharing, where you statements can lead to discontent. You statements can feel blaming, where I statements, you're taking the burden of why and where you're leading. Be clear about the topic you are discussing, and you may want to share the outline prior to the discussion. You may want to kind of couch to Mom, I would really like when I come and visit next time to just be able to spend a little bit of time talking about maybe some plans for the future. I know things right now are going really well, but because I'm so far away, I think it's important for me to have a better understanding of some of the things that have already been set up so that they know this is coming. With the holiday season coming, a lot of times we think, oh, we're all going to be together for Thanksgiving. This is the perfect time to have a conversation. And you go, and Mom and Dad are thinking this is the perfect time to spend enjoying the grandkids. This is the perfect time to have a peaceful dinner, not anticipating that right when turkey is served, that now you're saying, this house is too big for you. You need to move out. So again, we need to ensure that people understand what we're going to discuss and how that discussion is going to go. We need to give others time to process and think about what you're sharing. You may have been thinking about this for months, years, about I need to talk to Mom and Dad about what's happening with their finances. I need to understand their decision-making tools that they have in place. But they don't know that unless you've talked to them about it. This may be the first time that they're even thinking that you had a desire to understand that. And so you've had the time to plan and process. They need that same time. So it's important to make sure that people don't feel that that one conversation is your only conversation. Consider using non-personal examples. It's really, for many people, a great icebreaker to be able to say, recently one of my coworkers shared with me some discussions that she had with her mom and dad, who are, starting to get to getting older, similar age to you guys. And it really got me thinking that we haven't had those kind of conversations. So she gave me some things that there is happening in their family. I'd love to be able to share those same things. When we put it out of the personal, when it's not about mom and dad, but the starting piece was about a friend, it often can help. And if you can find examples of those, maybe a news story you read, and again, you can make up the story, the example, so that it fits to what you're needing to hopefully get out in the conversation, but at least it's taking it out of the personal. Respect others' rights to agree and to disagree. Again, just because this is your solution, your desire, does not necessarily mean that it is the right decision or the right decision for them at this time. So we have to recognize that people do have the right to disagree. We need to be aware of our own reactions and feelings and really think about, are there some triggers that happen when I've had family discussions that I have to be very aware of? Is it that my sister and I don't get along, and if she disagrees with me, we're going to kind of start a tug of war? Practice the conversation with a neutral party and give them permission to share feedback honestly with you. If they say, wow, the content of what you're going to share is really valuable, but you started to get really emotional about it, or you started to really kind of talk as if you're the only one who has the right answer. It's really important, but you have to give that neutral party permission to give you feedback. Again, understand that this conversation may not end in a decision. It hopefully will continue as an additional conversation, which will then end in some decisions. And phrase concerns as questions. Again, when we say them in sentences, they often can sound blaming and controlling. But when we ask questions, it gives the other person the sense that you care about what their answer is. And if you do ask a question, you have to be prepared for the answer. Whether it's an answer you're hoping for or not, we don't want to ask questions that either we're not going to listen to or we really don't want to know what the answer is. That's why, there's certain things we may not ask our kids even as they get past their teenage years, because do we really want to know how they're going to respond? So, of course, communications do's lead to communications don'ts. Don't come across as judging or defensive. And again, that goes back to the first slide in terms of recognizing your feelings, understanding some of your emotions, knowing what some of the obstacles may be from past experiences. Don't do all the talking. You need to listen, you need to acknowledge, you need to answer questions that they may have for you. Don't lie or exaggerate, even if it feels the easiest way. There's many people who, when their parent says, I never want to move into a nursing home, and the kids say, Mom, we'll never, ever, ever put you into a nursing home, and then find themselves in a situation where, because of that person's medical condition and the need and the benefit that may come from that, now have to really struggle with themselves that they have to go against those wishes. And oftentimes it's at a time when mom and dad can't kind of relieve that burden and say, we understand. So it's important to be able to say, it is my hope and it is my word that we will do everything we can to ensure that you can stay safely at home. However, if there is times that we need to bring in additional resources and maybe some of those resources may be outside of your home, we're going to do it in a way that reflects and respects what your healthcare wishes are, your location, all of those things. So again, really important to not lie or exaggerate. It's easy in family discussions, particularly when siblings are involved, to return to old hurts and issues. So really try to stay on point. And that's where sometimes having an outline. And you can be kind of funny about it and say, yeah, I know. I brought an outline to this family meeting. It seems really silly, but I know that we can sometimes get off topic a little bit. So I thought this would be the best way for all of us to ensure that we're going to make sure that we get what we need at the end of this time. If you start having people going off topic, bring them back and say, hey, let's maybe save that till the end. But right now, let's get through kind of step 1, 2, or 3. Don't believe a quick agreement means that everything is solved. People will often say, okay, fine, we'll do that. And it's just too easy. You know that something else is happening there. They think that if they just agree to it, in the end, you're not going to hold them to it. So quick agreements does not mean everything's solved. Quick agreements often mean, yeah, I'm just kind of being dismissed. Don't go in thinking that there has to be a winner. Don't be rigid in your thinking that, again, there is only one answer. If dementia, Alzheimer's, or cognitive impairments are involved, understand the limitations that these bring. It's important to understand that for your parents, particular cognitive impairment? Is it that they have a poor understanding of time? Is it short-term memory? Is it safety decisions? Is it executive decision making? What is the limitations? If it's something around time, we're not going to give time frames that, we're going to start services in 2 weeks, because 2 weeks means nothing, perhaps, to that individual. So understand what the limitations are and work with them to kind of ensure that the information is brought about in the best way. Use simple words and sentences. Make sure that the elder repeats back to you so you can gauge their understanding. And that's true whether it's for a memory impairment or for hearing loss. Oftentimes people will just nod in agreement because it's too hard to try to hear or understand what they're saying. And particularly when someone has a memory impairment or a cognitive impairment, they may really say that they understand, but clearly they can't repeat back what the meaning is. They can only understand what the words are, but not what the meaning is behind them. When communication is difficult for someone, whether it's from a stroke or from some type of cognitive impairment, listen for words that are repeated or seem especially meaningful for that person. If someone continually is saying the word home, 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 it may be for them that they understand they need assistance, but they want to have that assistance in their home. That for them, their sense of what home means is the most important thing to them. And don't provide excessive information or detail if it's not necessary to that person. Again, this is not where we're lying to somebody, but if there's all the little details about how we're going to actually get that service set up or that particular kind of agreement put in place, that's less important than just being able to know what's the overarching kind of decision. Again, any sensory impairments, ensure that hearing aids are functioning properly. Make sure you're always speaking slowly and clearly and facing the individual. It's amazing, even without a lot of training, how many people can read lips. We know that just by watching Football Sunday and being able to read the lips of the coaches on the sideline. So we're very good with that. But we only can do that if we're speaking slowly and we're facing that person. Ensure that the environment is free of background noise. So if someone has a hearing deficiency, being in a restaurant may not be the best location because there's going to be too much background noise. Write parts of conversation down to refer back to. So if somebody is having difficulty hearing, make sure that you're maybe writing some key points down. Confirm the person has heard what you've said, and use large formatted guides and tools. If you have something that you've printed off in several pages, but just in a larger format, so that we're ensuring that the person really understands and it's respectful to them. So how do we open a dialogue? The most important thing is that we have to talk about people's goals. And it doesn't have to be strictly about a caregiving plan. It's not that we have to ask their goal for, do you want to have home care services brought in, or do you want to be in an assisted living? It could be, what's important to you when you think about receiving care. Who do you want to be helping you with decisions? It's kind of asking in more generalities, and then you can get to the specifics. Goals are really important to ask people because it allows us to use their words, their language back to them. When you may be at a kind of a conflict point, or when decisions have to be made. Mom, you shared with me that the most important thing for you is to remain in your home. In order to do that and for you to be safe, these are the things that we would have to do to get that. We're going to have to make some adjustments in the bathroom. We're going to have to bring in some equipment. We're going to have a companion or a caregiver coming in 3 days a week. Being able to use someone's goals back to them, and not in a disrespectful way, but as a reference point, is really powerful. It also is giving them back the control. You may be saying the same thing, But if they've started the conversation, if you use their words, then they remain in control. Think about openings that they may have already shared. It's amazing how often our parents at some point along the way, or our older relatives, have started a conversation, have wanted to have a discussion. And we, because of our discomfort with the conversation, often have shied away from it. You know, when our parents are saying, you know, well, I'm not going to live forever, that's not a point to say, oh, Mom, of course you are. Because the reality is she's not. And is she trying to tell you something that there's some issues around with her health, or that she's concerned about something? We need to really remember and think about what people have said to us, and have they given us the opening for these conversations before? Have they talked about, wow, I wish I would have saved when I was younger, because maybe they're concerned about running out of money now. Wow, this house is so big. Guess I should have moved, years ago. Mom, are you concerned that you're not able to keep up with the house? Is that taking more of your energy than you'd like? Or, wow, all my friends are sick or dying, or, I keep going to funerals. Is there something, Mom, that's got to be really hard? Does that make you think about, your own mortality? Does it make you think about your own health? I can't remember when the last time is you went to the physician. Would you like to set up an appointment? I can come with you. Talk about your own planning process. I am a believer that we should never ask somebody to do something that we ourselves don't think is important enough to have done. We should never ask our family members to complete a healthcare directive when it is not a document for the aged. It is a document for anybody over the age of 18 who wants to have say in their healthcare decisions, even when they're not able to communicate those. So it's important that if we're asking our family to do something and to do some of that planning, to talk about some of your own planning. Wow, Mom, we finally met with an attorney. We're gonna put that will together. Would you like to accompany us? And maybe there's some questions that you have about, your own will. I'd love for you to meet the attorney. Or we've just really started thinking about, looking at our own retirement in the next 15 years. And these are the steps we're taking. Is that something you and Dad had done in the past? And where are you at with those goals? Did you keep those? And what's most important to them? Is it their independence? Is it their finances? Is it their well-being of others and being concerned about the burden that they may put on others? And when you understand that, it helps to drive decisions. My dad, who had never been a good driver, ever. And as he aged, he became less so, just because of some of his own physical kind of frailties. And he really didn't want to give up driving. He limited when and how and where, but he really didn't want to give it up totally. And I recognized that he was really not safe for himself or really others. And, he certainly had his cognition about him, but I knew that the finances were important to them. And so I utilized that as a way to start the conversation about, I think it's time to maybe not be driving at all. My concern is that if you get in an accident and cause somebody harm, that they could sue you above and beyond what your insurance has. And I know how much you guys have worked to have that nest egg and to want to be able to use it in the ways that you define. And I think it wasn't that I had any magic words, but I think the timing was perfect, that he had already started to realize that he shouldn't be driving at all. But talking about finances in that way, I think it just kind of highlighted it to him. And within that next week, he did end up giving up driving. Organizing your team. You can't create a plan without having the input and support of your loved ones, other family, and key friends or community resources. It may be that you live out of town, but there's a neighbor who checks on them every day. that person needs to have a voice, because you may be making plans and your parents may be thinking, oh, well, Mary's great. She comes and checks on us every day. So we don't need any of those, fall buttons or anything like that. But Mary may not want to continue doing that. Mary may be concerned that, she can't handle the increase in care needs. Mary may be moving in 6 months, and that needs to be brought out. So it's important to involve others. Maybe they have a pastor or a rabbi that is close to them, and they would be a good participant in this. While one person should take the lead in leading a conversation, they need to allow that everyone gets to talk if they wish. And we all know that there's people who participate in a conversation by listening and may not have a lot to share in that moment, but will come back with ideas and thoughts. We have to give them that ability to do so. So when siblings are involved, the best thing about caring for an elderly parent is having a sibling to share the experience. The worst thing about caring for an elderly parent is having a sibling to share the experience, because making decisions alone is tough. Making decisions with others is just as tough. And so we have to really think about how we make decisions together, whose role does everybody take. We can't think that just because someone does more of the physical care of either the person or the home, that they have more to say than the person who may be behind the scenes coordinating the caregivers or coordinating the finances. Really, as long as everybody is taking a place in the care and the decision, they have a place at the table. Issues that siblings may face before having the talk with your parents. It's important that sibling groups are at least on the same page with having the discussion, even if they are at different places on what the outcome is. I've sat down at the table with hundreds of families over my time and my work. And there are very, very few situations where I could ever say that the family members did not have the best interest of their parents or their loved one. But I can say that oftentimes, with the best decision for what they want or the best intent, they had different ways of getting to that place. And so that's where the discussion point has to be. And it's important, again, that everybody has the right to those differences, as long as the goal, and that's where we should start with, is what is the siblings' goals for mom and dad. And in the most cases, it's going to be that we just want them to be safe and happy and to be able to do the things that they enjoy. It's not helpful if these conversations are occurring in silos. So to have you going and having the conversation, and then your brother going and having his conversation, and your sister going and having her conversation, because what's going to happen is mom and dad may choose the one that they like the best, and everybody else is going to feel like they didn't have a role in that. So it's really important that together people have these conversations. Old behaviors and rivalries may reemerge. And it's amazing how we kind of fall back on patterns and roles that we played years ago. Even if we are now parents and grandparents ourselves, we tend to go back to being the younger sister who felt picked on by everybody else in the family. Even though, again, outside of that family home, you are a competent, well-spoken individual. So just be aware of those and be honest about them. And again, humor is often a way to kind of reduce the stress. Responsibility may be unfairly distributed, but that does not negate everyone being involved in the decision. There needs to be ways to communicate among all. And if someone's not able to participate in a conversation because of their location, because of their own responsibilities, it's really important to involve them. Don't punish them for that, but involve them in some way. Send them an email, call them on the phone, whatever is your best means of communicating with them. Please try to do that. And again, except in rare situations, most want the best for their parent or loved one, even if their means to the end differs. It's important as we're starting conversations is to assess the needs. And depending on the timing and the situation, there may be a lot to assess and understand, or you may be in the early stages where nothing's happened, but because of some of the inevitabilities of aging, it is important to plan ahead. Assessment may be of a clinical nature. You may be gathering data from doctors or rehab centers. Maybe mom just had a neuropsych evaluation to really understand if she had Alzheimer's. And then this may be used during the meeting to show where things are at, to think about what the long-term concerns are. Maybe the last doctor's appointment showed that mom's cancer is progressing, and they have to think about, do they want to go with more aggressive treatment or looking at planning for hospice. But assessment may also just be observation that's taken place with no professional lens, but just taken place over time from phone calls, from visits, from other family and friends who have shared their thoughts and concerns. And so the assessment may be of a very different nature, but may be very valuable. You know, Mom, I've heard on the last couple of phone calls that you've talked more and more about how tired you are at night, and that you just don't feel like you have the energy to even do some of the tasks around the home. That's not a clinical assessment, but that's something that you can share from what someone has shared with you. There's many areas that you can think about to review. And again, I would not have a conversation and begin the talk with all of these, but these are things that you, as whoever is leading the conversation, as a family group, that you may want to be thinking about, and each maybe take a different role in understanding these, whether it's around home maintenance and safety and the living situation itself, whether it's looking and assessing their financial area of need, or legal affairs such as developing an advance directive or a power of attorney form. Maybe it's around transportation and having to think about how they get from point A to B, or personal care needs, or their cognitive changes that's happening, that their memory is showing more and more signs of decline. Behavioral changes, someone's becoming much more frustrated or sad and withdrawn. Sensory changes such as visual and hearing impairments may be kind of an area that you have to focus on. Maybe it's time to get an assessment. Maybe it's time for a hearing aid. Medication management, one of the areas that can lead to other concerns is someone's inability to manage and remember when their meds need to be taken. And then just physical changes that are happening due to disease or due to just the normal process of aging itself. It's important then to be planning and taking action. And prior to the discussion, whether it's in phone or in person, determine what the end goal is for the time together. You know, Mom, Dad, I would love to come into town and start some conversation about, and then share that. Kind of talk about what you would like to have happen. You know, I know I'm only going to be in town for 3 days, but during that time, I'm hoping that by the end, we kind of have a plan for what we're going to do next. And I'll come back out if we, make some decisions about someone we're going to go see or visit or do some tours or interview some companies, but define what that's going to be. Determining those follow-up steps. It's very easy to kind of have the conversation, kind of say everyone's in agreement that what's happening today needs to change to get a better result, but we don't say what that is. So there's really more than one step. And as you're planning for the conversation, it's also the time to be gathering your resources about what your community offers. And that's really key. Bringing in reinforcements and additional providers to assist as needed. It may be very beneficial to have an outside provider share information about the services versus you trying to explain it. I've been in a lot of family meetings when I, as the representative of the HomeCare company, have been able to talk about what HomeCare is, kind of get through some of the myths that people may have, talk about, how it starts and what the process is. And what I have going in my favor is that the individual, the older adult, doesn't have the emotional relationship with me. They're not, they are at least going to, in the most cases, socially be polite and listen, versus being more argumentative, which sometimes happens with their own family members, not because they like me better, but because they don't know me and they don't feel comfortable kind of challenging someone in my role coming as an outsider. I used to tell families when we would have difficult family conversations, the reality is I'm not going to sit down at Thanksgiving dinner with you. So I can challenge a little bit differently. I can ask your brother, your sister, some questions that they may, if you ask them, become much more defensive and emotional about. But I can ask it in a different way because, we never tried to beat each other up. We never tried to have to figure out who was going to sit in the front seat of the car. So they didn't have any of that. They weren't vying. I never vied for mom's attention with them. And I can tell you that even though I've done so many of these family meetings, I myself will bring in an outside provider when it's for my own parents. Because there's sometimes that even though I do this with others, they don't see me in that same role. They see me as their youngest child. So it's all of us can benefit from that. And most important is, remember, you can do all the right things and still not get the result that you want, or that may be in that moment the best thing. But what we can do is, with the information we have at that moment, try to make a decision that is best for everyone. There's some resources that I would love to be able to share with you. One is ARP does have some great resources online, and one of them is a planning guide for families. It gives some checklists for just having the conversation. I think it's a great tool, and you can just download that and print it out for free. Aging Life Care is an organization of geriatric care managers. So these are social workers often and nurses who are really adept at having family conversations and helping to put together plans for both short-term and long-term needs. There are costs associated with that, but if you go to aginglifecare.org, you would be able to find a professional in the area that your family member resides in. SynergyHomeCare.com is a great resource for lots of different tools. We have a lot of booklets on a variety of topics. We also have a free book called Where Do We Begin? A Guide to Elder Caregiving. This is about an 80-page guide that really helps give you a lot of tools on doing an assessment from a layperson's perspective, talking about the different resources. It gives you a glossary of all the different terminology that you may be hearing when you get into the healthcare arena for seniors. It gives you checklists and communication guides. So great tool. You can read it on our website, or you can, again, download a copy for free. And then the Synergy Home Care YouTube channel, which has many of these pre-recorded webinars on a variety of topics. And each one of the monthly webinars we're doing in this series and ongoing will be up on that YouTube channel as well. In talking about that, wanted to share next month's topic, which is, I think, a perfect timing with the holidays, but it's on dividing family treasures without dividing the family. What I have found in my years of working with families is that dividing the money is pretty simple. A will takes care of that. It's dividing those special items in a home, the heirlooms that can create very touchy family situations. So we're going to talk talk about that. We're going to give some really step-by-step ways that as a family, prior to someone's death or after a death, to be able to divide those special treasures, that one necklace, the one piece of art, the special recipe book that mom had, and how to do that with being able to maintain the best relationships with sibling and other family members. So I invite you to that. It's December 13th. We'll be putting that out on our Facebook page with a link, and any of our local offices, our Synergy Home Care local offices, will also be able to share that information with you as well. I'd like to open it up for anybody who has questions. So if anybody has a question that they would like to post in the question box, please do that at this time. And then I'll give everyone a few minutes to be able to do that. I know that many people are listening just from their cell phone, and so it's difficult to open it up just for on the audio. But please know that if you do have questions that you would like more specific answer to based on this conversation, please feel free to reach out to us. And you can reach out to me directly at Carla, Carla Sutter, Sutter, at synergyhomecare.com. And thank you so much for a comment that was made. I'm glad that the information is helpful for you. That's why, again, Synergy Home Care is really trying to put together topics that are timely for families who are starting to kind of experience changes due to age and illness, but also for the professionals who are out there working in a variety of different roles with the aging population. If, again, you would like to receive a certificate of attendance, please feel free to email me at that same email. You'll also be receiving a survey type comment from the GoToWebinar that you are getting, so you can feel free to write a comment, and those will come to me. There's a question: how is a determination made about someone not able to care for themselves? You know, there's a lot that goes into that. There's a couple of things. You know, we have to think about it in two different ways. There's the ability to care for oneself because they can not do it any longer due to physical changes. Then there's cognitive changes, and then there's unfortunately people who are experiencing both. It's much easier often to plan for those who have physical changes because we have a better opportunity to kind of barter with somebody about making decisions on bringing someone in for some of those very task-oriented needs, assistance with bathing because someone is not as flexible as they used to get in and out of the tub, and they don't have a shower in the home. It's often more difficult to kind of manage that when someone has some cognitive declines because they often don't recognize those changes. With that, one is absolutely utilizing the physician, who can be a great asset. Oftentimes seniors will really listen to someone in the medical field, and if you have a conversation with them to say, I'm really concerned, these are the things that have happened with my mom. The other is, again, asking goals. And even when someone is maybe cognitively have some declines, they often can still talk about goals. You know, when would it be the time that you will believe that you need some assistance, and kind of being able to work backwards from that. If someone wants to stay in their home, but they're doing something that is a high-risk activity, maybe going down into the basement with rickety stairs, being able to say, you know, Mom, you shared with me that the most important thing is to remain in your home. My concern is that if you're using your energy to go down into the basement, you have a higher risk of falling. And if you fall, the concern is that you'll break something, and many people, after they've broken a hip, are unable to return back to their home. What I'd like to suggest is we start with just someone coming in just for XYZ tasks. So people don't feel like you have to kind of go from 0 to 60. There's a lot of fear that if we start services, we're going to kind of take over someone's home and their life. If we can start with small incremental services in whatever way that is, people are often more open to doing that. And again, for someone with financial concerns, or they're very kind of concerned about spending any money, even if they have it, is to be able to talk about, Mom, if you ended up having an injury that brought you out of this home, this is the cost to be able to be in this type of setting. However, if we start with just some intermittent services where somebody's going to be able to help minimize some of those risk factors, this is the price it's going to be. And which check would you rather write at the end of the month? And again, it depends on what's important to somebody. How do you deal with two parents with differing desires and cognitive decline, both having given us durable power of attorney? Again, great question, and certainly a challenging one. I think one of the things to consider is there a way and a kind of service that can be brought in that really accomplishes everybody's goal? Sometimes we can bring in services into the home that really are not kind of impacting one of the individuals, but helping the other. So that if somebody is more able to be out and doing things, but one of the spouses or partner isn't, is to be able to say, I know, Dad, that you're not ready for this level of care, but why don't we do this? Why don't on Monday and Wednesday we have somebody come into the home and be here with Mom? You then can go off and do some of the things that you like to do, but are concerned that you're leaving Mom by herself at home. I think if people understand that they can bring in resources and start services that don't have to mean that everybody in the home has to be a part of it, but that they can get benefit off of some of those things. That is one way. And again, whichever individual is the one who is more cognitively intact and able to kind of recognize what can happen if we don't do XYZ, is the one to start with. They may be the one who will be more willing to adjust their plan to accommodate the other. And I've seen that. The webinar should be available on the YouTube channel by Friday, is what we're hoping for. Yes, the material presented should be available as a document that can be shared. We're absolutely looking at ways to kind of take this and put it into some type of easy-to-use booklet as a guide. So we will absolutely take that suggestion to be able to give you something that could be of benefit to you. Thank you for that suggestion as well. Any other comments or questions? Just give a couple more minutes. Thank you so much for those who have asked questions, because oftentimes those questions are the same one that someone else is wanting to ask. In addition, if you have topics that you would like to hear about that are important to you, please feel free to email me again, or to respond to the survey that you'll get from GoToWebinar, and we'd love to be able to ensure that the topics that we're going to be presenting are really the ones that are meeting your needs. You can also go to synergyhomecare.com, put in your location, and you will find one of our offices in your area and talk with them about some of the questions that you have, and they are also available to assist you. Follow-up, what would a doctor or lawyer do in relation to termination of incompetence? So incompetence and capacity are a couple of different terms. So incompetence has to be determined by a judge in a court setting to declare someone incompetent. Capacity is often what we're talking from a position of like a physician would be helping to determine. Lawyers themselves are not going to determine competence, but they may help a family who is concerned about capacity issues, someone's ability to understand their situation, understand the resources and available treatments, and be able to make a decision on those. That kind of is what guides capacity. They may be able to help kind of put together some documents. When it comes to those documents, again, having early on, as early on as possible, someone who has completed a financial power of attorney and a healthcare directive, which appoints someone to make healthcare decisions for them when they are no longer able, and being no longer able is often going to be where a doctor would be determining that, or it is so clear because they had an incident where they are in a coma under medication, cannot verbally or in any means communicate. So those are some of the ways. Again, we have to kind of think about capacity in different ways. Is it that someone's making poor decisions, which they're allowed to do unless it is putting someone else at risk? Or is it that they truly are making decisions that just don't agree with us? And then that's a different conversation. But it's really important if you have concerns of not being able to make choices about next steps for a loved one, and you're concerned that it will lead to a negative outcome in a physical way, or a concern of the environment, that they could do damage to their own home or somebody else's by way of leaving the stove on, etc. I would definitely start the conversation with an elder law attorney, which you can go online, and there's a National Association of Elder Law Attorneys, NAELA.com, I believe. And really kind of start there to understand what options may be available in your state. So hopefully that helps. Thank you so much for all of your time. And please, again, feel free to reach out to us for any questions about this topic, or any needs that you may have for your loved one, to be able to keep them as safe and comfortable and engaged in their own home. The web address again for the elder law would be National Association of Elder Law Attorneys. So if you take each one of those beginning letters, I don't know if it's a .com or .org that you would be using, but it would be the NAELA. And hopefully that will help you find somebody in your community as well. Thank you again, and look forward to having you all on when we do our next webinar on December 13th, and that will be from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks again. Bye-bye.